At my son's wedding, everyone was speaking of love and forever. I raised a glass to the family's happiness. An hour later, I saw my wife kissing the bride's father behind the kitchen. The guests' smiles turned into blades. Now every one of their toasts sounds like mockery. They betrayed me at the very moment I still believed in their honesty. I chose to answer in kind, and with a single step, I shattered two families. Warm September sunlight spilled across the stained glass windows of New Hope Baptist, tinting the sanctuary in gentle rubies and golds. Harold Brown let the colors swim over his shoes. Old, polished leather that creaked with memories of school hallways and Sunday sermons. 66 years had not dulled his habit of arriving early. He stood in the hush, palms folded behind his back, watching ushers bustle like quiet doves. Who could imagine a heart cracking on a day built for celebration? The question drifted through Harold's mind as the pipe organ coughed awake. He inhaled the mingled scents of lilies, wood polish, and faint choir robe starch. They wrapped him in a quilt of decades. For a moment, he simply basked in fatherly pride. Marcus, his only son, would speak vows this afternoon to Camille Ford, the spirited girl who once raided Harold's backyard fig tree. Evelyn's laugh darted toward him from the narthex, bright as a wind chime. She moved with practiced grace, checking pew bows, smoothing her teal dress, kissing cheeks of distant cousins. Harold's chest warmed. Yet, as he crossed the aisle to help her, he felt the pews breathe out an unease he couldn't name. Evelyn glanced beyond him, just once, toward the vestibule, where Thomas Ford shook hands with deacons. Her smile faltered, barely a heartbeat, but Harold felt it land like a pebble in still water, rippling. He brushed the moment aside. Wasn't every wedding threaded with stray nerves? He adjusted a hymn book, cracked a dad joke to the ring-bearer, accepted a low five from Camille's little brother. Still, a chill lingered behind his collar. At 11:30, the sanctuary brimmed with expectancy. Marcus arrived in a charcoal suit that hugged his linebacker shoulders. Camille floated in ivory lace, eyes shimmering with promise. Reverend King cleared his throat, and the first organ chord rose, steady, hopeful, ancient. In the second pew, Harold slid his fingers into Evelyn's, letting the music stitch this memory deep. If you could bottle joy, he thought, it would taste like this hush before I do. Halfway through the ceremony, Harold caught Evelyn wiping a tear. Her lashes, wet and trembling, looked almost guilty. He squeezed her hand harder, and she squeezed back. Yet her gaze drifted again toward Thomas. Why did her shoulders tense when he smiled? Harold's stomach pinched, but duty called him forward for the father of the groom blessing. Standing behind the lectern, he searched for steady breath. Sunlight framed the couple like a promise. May your love, he began, voice low, be the river that carves its own canyon. Slow, deliberate, unstoppable. Congregation murmured, Amen. He ended with a soft joke about locking the honeymoon luggage twice. Laughter scattered like sparrows. Only Evelyn's chuckle sounded half a beat late, brittle. If only Harold knew the secret already blooming beneath the polished veneer. Would his blessing sound different? But a wedding moves like water. It never pauses for suspicion. Applause rose, the recessional thundered, and guests spilled into afternoon heat smelling of magnolia and barbecue smoke. Stay close. Even the brightest vows cast shadows you can't yet see. The reception hall, a converted trolley station on Beale, glowed under strings of Edison bulbs. Brass band rehearsed blues standards while servers floated gumbo cups through knots of dancing cousins. Harold made his rounds, pocketing compliments like pocket squares. Nothing missing, he told himself. Nothing broken. Yet Evelyn disappeared twice in the first hour. Once she claimed a phone call from her sister. Once she joked about repinning Camille's veil. Harold searched the crowd until he found her again near the dessert table, cheeks flushed, breath quick. Thomas stood beside her, too close for casual chatter, his wedding ring glinting like a dare. They parted when Harold neared. Was it the ghost of guilt that made Thomas pat Harold's back harder than necessary? "Fine party, brother," Thomas boomed. "Couldn't have asked for better weather, unless the Lord set the thermostat himself." Harold forced a grin. Why did Thomas's cologne cling to Evelyn's shawl when she brushed past? Dinner came. Harold toasted with blackberry wine, weaving anecdotes of Marcus's first bicycle crash and Camille's fearless debate wins. Cameras flashed, glasses clinked. Across the sweetheart table, Evelyn lifted her flute, eyes glossy, then looked away as Thomas whispered something at her ear. Camille's brows knit. Harold's joke about grandchildren stalled on his tongue. Later, when stars pricked the Memphis sky, the DJ dimmed lights for the father-daughter dance. Thomas guided Camille in slow circles while Harold filmed on his phone, but the lens trembled. His focus kept skewing toward Evelyn at the bar, twisting her napkin. She glanced at Thomas, swaying with Camille, and her chest rose on a shaky sigh. Aunt Bernice tugged Harold's elbow. "Child, you look downright peaky. Eat you a praline before you faint." He laughed off her concern, pocketing the candy, though his appetite had fled. Could happiness sour this quickly? The question snagged like a splinter. Mid-evening, Camille approached him, face pale beneath the sparkle. "Dad," she caught herself, flushing at the new title. "Mr. Brown, can we talk? Privately?" Her fist clenched a silver flash drive. Harold felt a drum begin somewhere behind his ribs. They slipped onto a side terrace scented with jasmine and exhaust from nearby traffic. Camille's voice shook. "I wouldn't bring this if it weren't real." She slid the drive into his palm. "The catering cameras auto-sync to my laptop. I saw something." She swallowed. "It's from 15 minutes ago." Harold's fingertips went numb. Inside, he heard the band strike a jaunty horn line, as if mocking. Jasmine's sweetness turned metallic. Camille whispered, "I love you both, but you deserve to see Hooked by Dread." Harold pocketed the drive. He managed a steady, "Thank you, baby girl," and sent her back to Marcus with a fatherly pat. Alone, he stared at the closed French doors. What truth waits inside that little metal coffin? Night air pressed thick as confession. Halfway back to the hall, he stopped, a sudden urge to flee battling loyalty to face whatever lay recorded. His breath hitched, shoulders sagged. Then he squared his spine. Teachers don't flinch from ugly facts. He found an empty coat room, slid the drive into the venue's laptop. 10 seconds that would splinter lives forever blinked onto the screen. First frame, the rear courtyard, dim string lights, a hush between kitchen deliveries. Evelyn steps from the double doors, arms folded as if cradling secrets. Thomas follows, jacket off, tie loosened, a comet's tale of midlife recklessness. They speak. No audio, only lips and longing. Harold's pulse thudded. He leaned closer. Thomas touches her wrist. She doesn't pull away. A cautious glance. Then they melt together. Slow, intimate, undeniable. Evelyn's fingers trace Thomas's lapel like reading braille of forbidden history. His hand cups her cheek. They kiss once, tender, aching, too practiced to be spur of the moment. Harold tasted tin. Was it possible to die standing, heart still beating? The clip ended. Only 42 seconds, enough to raise a 38-year marriage. He clicked it again. Punishment, proof, paralysis. Each replay drove slivers deeper under his ribs. Outside the coat room, Laughter erupted at the bouquet toss. Inside, Harold braced palms on the folding table, breath sawing. Voice inside whispered, "Confront, expose." Another answered coldly, "There's a sharper weapon than anger." Silence sharpened by choice. He pocketed the drive, shut the laptop with a soft click. Through the crack of the door, he saw Evelyn re-enter the ballroom, cheeks flushed, hair mussed in a way only he used to leave it. She scanned the crowd. Was she seeking him or Thomas? Harold's stomach lurched, and then something unexpected fluttered in his chest. Not rage, but a bitter, delicate resolve. If vows were currency, hers had devalued. But there was still a debt to settle. Somehow, someway, paid in equal measure. He straightened his tie, wiped moisture from his eyes, and stepped back into golden light. Music swelled. Couples swayed. Harold slipped the flash drive into his inner pocket, next to the praline Aunt Bernice had given him. Sweetness pressed against betrayal. Camille caught his gaze from across the room. He forced a gentle nod. "I know. Thank you." Her shoulders relaxed, but her eyes brimmed sympathy, and perhaps fear for the aftermath she'd just set in motion. Marcus noticed nothing, oblivious in new husband glow. Harold exhaled through clenched teeth. Could he protect his son from tonight's shatter, or would truth slice everyone before dawn? The cost of silence can feel merciful until it multiplies in secret. He crossed the floor to congratulate the DJ, mouth-forming pleasantries none would remember. In his pocket, the flash drive burned like a coal, and somewhere behind him, Evelyn laughed at a joke Thomas whispered. "Stay." Because when love's mirror cracks, every reflection turns into a question, and someone must decide which shards to keep. Harold awoke the next morning to the blind pull's rattle against his bedroom window, a soft metallic heartbeat that reminded him he had slept barely 2 hours. Outside, early Sunday sunlight bled over Beale Street's brick facades, sugaring them in gold. But inside the brown house, every shadow felt heavier than gravity. His first breath tasted like cold iron, the taste of the flash drive's secret, still tucked in the inner pocket of yesterday's suit jacket hanging on the chair. How many marriages break before breakfast, yet keep breathing through courtesy? Downstairs, Evelyn's footsteps shuffled across linoleum, the same slow rhythm she used when brewing chicory coffee for them both. The familiarity jabbed him, domestic melody over a brand new dissonance. He sat on the edge of the bed, palms on knees, and studied the indigo veins in his hands. They reminded him of tributaries feeding a river. Yesterday those waters had seemed clear. Now they ran silt-thick with doubt. A breeze nudged the curtains, and a magnolia petal slipped in, pale against the dark hardwood. He remembered describing love as a river during his toast. Slow, deliberate, unstoppable. Now he wondered whether rivers could reverse, clawing upstream to some purer source. He pressed thumb to petal. It bruised purple, delicate tissue yielding under lightest pressure, like trust once you test it. He found Evelyn in the kitchen, humming Blessed Assurance. Bacon sizzled, syrup warmed. She smiled over her shoulder, but the skin at her temples twitched. "Morning, baby." "You sleep?" "A little," he rasped. Her gaze flicked to the suit jacket he had slung across his forearm. "You plan to press that before church?" Harold forced a nod, though his voice snagged. "Something like that." Silence is the most fragile bridge. Step wrong, and two cliffs drift apart forever. He poured coffee, the cup rattling in its saucer. Evelyn reached to steady his hand. The gesture felt ritualistic, a communion wafer taken with closed eyes. He withdrew, pretending to fetch sugar. They ate in near silence, only forks and clock ticks conducting the room. At one point, Evelyn asked, too brightly, "Did you talk much with Thomas after we left the hall?" The question clanged like a dropped cymbal. Harold chewed slowly, swallowed shards of pancake. "No, Couldn't find him. Lot of guests. She murmured, fingertips skating the rim of her mug. He watched those fingers, the same ones that had cupped Thomas's lapel in the video, and felt glass splinters settle behind his sternum. He carried plates to the sink, water rushing over grease like sudden rain. If he turned now, told her he'd seen everything, would confession cleanse or drown them? Instead, he asked what time she wanted to leave for service. She named a time. He nodded. Words passed like receipts, strictly necessary. Upstairs again, he closed the bedroom door, slid the flash drive from the suit pocket, and stared at its silver casing. River can't run backward, he whispered, but maybe it can carve a new path. The idea tasted both hopeful and terrifying. Beneath it, something colder pulsed. An eye for an eye logic he'd never preached yet suddenly understood. He tucked the drive into a desk drawer under unused stationery, locked it with a tiny brass key, then knelt at the edge of the bed to pray. Except no words came, only the rough sound of his breathing. After church, Harold intended to retreat into grading old essays, busy work for a retired teacher, but the phone rang, trembling the hall table. Caller ID flashed Rose Ford. His pulse kicked. He let it ring 4 times before lifting the receiver, as though each tone counted courage. "Morning, Harold?" Rose's voice came soft, textured like worn velvet. "I know it's sudden, but could you spare a minute? I'd like to return something of yours. A casserole dish from the rehearsal dinner?" "A casserole dish?" He pictured the covered stoneware she'd borrowed. It sat, clean, in her pantry, no doubt. The excuse was transparent, but her tone carried an undertow of urgency. "I can drive over," he heard himself say. 15 minutes. Evelyn, polishing silver at the dining table, didn't look up when he fetched his keys. "Forgot something at the church office," he lied. She murmured assent, eyes never lifting from her distorted reflection in a spoon, perhaps studying who she was now. A man can leave home wearing the same suit jacket, yet step into a world where every stitch means something else. Driving through Midtown, Harold rehearsed speeches, each more civil than the last. "Rose, I have proof. We both deserve honesty. How long have you known?" Asphalt shimmered. Blues poured from the radio, guitar strings bending sorrow into sweetness. By the time he reached the Ford's Victorian house, sweat prickled under his collar, though the AC blew cold. Rose opened the door before he knocked. Sunlight framed her, silver hair pinned, eyes rimmed in sleepless mauve. She held the casserole dish like a peace offering. "Come in a spell," she said. "Thomas is golfing with out-of-towners." The way she said Thomas carried brittle resignation, as if naming a splinter she'd learned to ignore. In the kitchen, sweet tea glasses clinked. They sat at a breakfast nook overlooking a flower bed of drooping zinnias. For a minute, they spoke of weather, Marcus's bright future, Camille's laugh, polite ripples on deep water. Then Rose inhaled, steadying herself. "Harold, I saw your face last night. Something changed behind your eyes." Harold's throat tightened. He traced condensation on his glass, carving circles, rings of a felled tree. There are things I can't unsee now." He lifted his gaze. Hers brimmed with the same painful recognition. "You too?" he whispered. She nodded, tears gathering. Without prompting, she pulled a folded photo from her cardigan pocket, a still frame from the venue cameras, Evelyn's hand on Thomas's chest, moonlight outlining betrayal. Rose's lips trembled. "Camille stopped by early," she said. "She thought I should know before rumors found me." She let out a sound between laugh and sob. "Funny, isn't it, that children shoulder the weight parents drop?" Harold exhaled, a stuttering sigh. The symmetry stunned him. Two spouses seated like bookends to the same shattering truth. When pain finds its twin, it can echo into understanding, or into something far darker. They talked, truly talked, for the first time in years. Rose told how Thomas's charm had lately turned distant, how she blamed menopause for their cooled bed, never suspecting wildfire outside. Harold confessed the video, the ache of hearing Evelyn hum gospel while hiding sin. At one point their fingers brushed between placemats, a brief, electric meeting of loneliness. They didn't flinch. A hush settled, thick with possibility. Rose's voice softened. "What now, Harold?" He swallowed. A clock ticked, measuring morality. He should have answered with scripture or counseling referrals. Instead, an unbidden thought surfaced. If vows can be broken, can comfort be wrong? He reached to squeeze her hand. Comfort, nothing more. Yet the gesture lingered one heartbeat too long. She didn't pull away. Some reckonings begin not with fury, but with a shared hush, soft enough to slip past conscience. Twilight draped the forward porch in lavender shadows when Harold finally rose to leave. They had shared secrets like contraband, each revelation lighter, yet more combustible. At the doorway, Rose pressed the casserole dish into his arms. Empty symbol, yet its weight different now. "Take care driving," she whispered. Their eyes held a question. Neither dared voice. On the drive home, Memphis street lamps flickered on, successive fireflies lining asphalt. Harold's mind churned, guilt braided with indignation, relief knotted with dread. He thought of chemistry lessons, combined two unstable elements, and new heat erupts. He wondered whether he and Rose had already sparked something they could not cool. Back home, Evelyn sat on the porch swing, hymnal in lap, but not singing. She looked up as he parked. For a second, porch light threw her face into golden softness, almost the girl he'd courted after high school debates. Then, the glow revealed worry lines cut deeper overnight. "Everything all right at church?" she asked. Harold set the casserole dish on the porch rail. "Found what I needed," he said, voice even. Inside that evenness, tectonic plates shifted. He sat beside her. The swing creaked, a metronome of unresolved tension. Cicadas buzzed. Somewhere, a distant sax curled blue notes into dusk. Evelyn traced a psalm with her fingertip, but did not read aloud. Finally, her whisper. "Last night was overwhelming." He studied her profile, the curve of cheek he had kissed countless times. "Some truths overwhelm," he answered. She blinked, lashes wet. "Harold, are we all right?" The plea in her voice carved him open. Can a man hold judgment and yearning in the same ribcage without tearing? He almost confessed everything. Video, Rose, the ache that drove him from house to house. Instead, words stalled behind clenched teeth. He gave a non-answer. "I'm tired, Eve. Let's pray on it." Truth deferred, like a bill sliding under a door. They went to bed early, backs turned. Moonlight painted separate islands on their quilt. Harold listened to Evelyn's breathing flatten into uneasy sleep. He reached to the nightstand, opened the drawer where the tiny brass key lay. He closed it again. Not tonight, he decided, though shame pricked. Hours later, he dreamed of rivers. Two ran side by side, one muddy, one clear, merging at a bend until both swirled gray, neither drinkable. He woke before dawn, throat dry, heart hammering. In the silence, a vow took shape. He would not let betrayal write the whole story, but the ink already bled through too many pages to erase. Before sunrise, he dressed quietly, slipped outside with the casserole dish, and set it on the passenger seat. Destination uncertain, motive tangled, he turned the ignition. As the engine hummed, a new hook flickered like dashboard glow. Revenge sometimes wears the mask of comfort. Who can tell the difference in the dark? He drove toward the river bluff, where morning light would soon gild brown water. Somewhere behind him, two households dreamed fragile dreams. Ahead, the Mississippi waited, broad, relentless, carrying secrets south. Stay. Because the next bend of water may reveal whether comfort can heal, or whether it breaks what's left unbroken. Morning haze still clung to the Mississippi when Harold parked beneath the hickories crowning Chickasaw Bluff. Downriver barges rumbled like distant drums, and gulls wheeled, gossiping over muddy water. He leaned on the hood, casserole dish under one arm, and breathed the scent of silt and dew-damp kudzu. At what point does a man stop measuring days by sunrise and start measuring them by regrets? He'd come to think, but the river only reflected clouds. Answers deferred. After half an hour, he slid the dish back onto the seat and drove south, tires whispering decisions he hadn't voiced. Instead of turning toward Rose's neighborhood, he pointed home. Conscience tugged like undertow. Yet 5 blocks from the house, his phone buzzed. Rose Ford. He hesitated, then answered. Harold, I hope this isn't untoward. Her voice was hushed. Camille and Marcus fly out tomorrow, and I promise to help them pack. Could you bring that stoneware by? Camille wants your peach cobbler recipe tucked inside as a wedding keepsake. Harold gripped the wheel. Of course, he said. Voice calm, heart skipping. They arranged a mid-afternoon drop-off. He ended the call, knuckles white. Was this simple courtesy, or the river choosing its shortcut? Back home, Evelyn hummed in the garden, snipping basil. Her serenity felt staged, but he noted how meticulously she watered the mint Marcus loved in his tea. As he sidled through the kitchen, she called, We should visit them before they fly. Drop a blessing. I'll take something over this afternoon, he replied, eyes fixed on measuring cups. He baked peach cobbler, vanilla, brown sugar, cinnamon, letting the perfume mask tension. He slid the still warm dish into Rose's stoneware, wrote the recipe on a note card, and wrapped the lid in gingham. Evelyn's gaze lingered on the package. You sure you don't want company? Harold forced a gentle smile. They've enough boxes to trip over. I'll be quick. She nodded, though uncertainty shadowed her eyes. As he left, her fingers brushed his elbow, slow, questioning. He pretended not to feel the tremor in that touch. Keep closer than Evelyn does, for the garden she tends may soon taste salt instead of rain. Rose opened her back door with flour on her cheek and gratitude in her smile. Moving boxes towered in the hallway. Bubble wrap popped underfoot like muted fireworks. Camille perched on the staircase, sorting passports, while Marcus lugged suitcases. The young couple glowed with tomorrow's adventure. New Orleans honeymoon, then Boston relocations. Dad! Marcus beamed, hugging Harold. Cobbler, you're the greatest. Camille kissed his cheek. Harold basked in their light, though guilt pricked. He wore secrets like sweat beneath his shirt. Rose guided him to the kitchen, away from the clatter. Flour dusted the air, smelling of impending goodbyes. Thank you, she whispered. They need sweetness today. Her fingertips grazed his wrist longer than necessary while lifting the dish. Neither spoke of last night's revelation, but it pulsed between them, a second heartbeat. Over coffee, they discussed rental deposits and flight delays. Marcus teased Camille about overpacking. Camille retorted that his guitar would count as emotional baggage. Laughter curled through cardboard labyrinths. For a fleeting span, Harold believed the cobbler's warmth might mend fractures, until Thomas strode in, golf visor askew, eyes narrowing at Harold beside Rose. A hush. Thomas clapped a brisk palm to Harold's back. "Didn't expect to see you this soon, Brother Brown." Too hearty, voice edged. Rose stiffened. Marcus, oblivious, called for tape, and Thomas broke eye contact to help. Harold offered polite thanks, but tension crackled. Thomas kept glancing at Rose's flower-specked cheek, at their nearness, at the cooling cobbler. Some men sense a storm before they feel the first drop. Others smell rival thunder in the distance. Camille suggested family photos by the porch swing. Phones emerged. Rose stood beside Thomas, Harold beside Evelyn's absence. The lens clicked, capturing 4 smiles and 2 undercurrents. When Marcus reviewed the shot, he asked jokingly, "Dad, you okay? You look like you're solving algebra." Everyone chuckled. Harold forced his brow to smooth. Boxes loaded, hugs exchanged. The young couple pulled away in a borrowed pickup, waving. Dust settled. Thomas cleared his throat. "Rose, sweetheart. Mind stepping in a sec? I can't find the warranty envelope." She disappeared indoors. Thomas turned to Harold, voice low. "Something on your mind?" Harold weighed response. The driveway radiated noon heat. Cicadas screamed overhead. "Plenty, Thomas." But today isn't the hour. Thomas's jaw flexed. "That's so." He stepped closer, scent of sweat and aftershave mixing. "Whatever gossip Rose whispers, remember? Marriage chew-ups a lot of stories. Best spit them out before they rot your teeth." Harold met his stare, grief cooling into granite. "Words aren't the issue. Cameras don't gossip." Thomas blanched, recovered with a tight chuckle. "Hell, brother, you tying your life to shaky footage?" Folks lean, hug, especially old friends. Harold's voice came soft, lethal. Your hand wasn't hugging, and Evelyn's lips weren't leaning. Silence detonated between them. A mockingbird trilled, oblivious. Thomas dropped his gaze, then forced a shrug. "You got it twisted. But since you believe what you saw, maybe ask yourself why Evelyn was lonely to start." He stalked toward the garage, metal door groaning behind him. Harold's fists unclenched only when Rose reemerged with empty hands and frightened eyes. "I heard voices," she said. "Just wind," he lied, throat raw. They retreated to the kitchen. Steam from fresh coffee fogged the window, mirroring their blurred futures. Rose reached to wipe Harold's damp brow with a dish towel, gentle, intimate. Their gazes locked. Walls hummed. She whispered, "We can't keep pretending." "I'm not pretending," he murmured. "I'm surviving." Outside, Thomas's truck engine blared, backing down the drive. Gravel spat under tires, part retreat, part threat. When truth shatters, the sharpest piece isn't the one that draws blood. It's the shard you hide in your pocket. Wednesday choir practice normally wrapped Harold in familiar harmony, but tonight each note jarred. Sopranos missed entrances. Tenors lagged. Evelyn directed from the piano, smile porcelain fixed. Harold stood with baritones, voice snagging. Halfway through, "Precious Lord," Sister Delaney leaned over. "You all right, Brother Brown? You singing like somebody stole your breath." He managed a chuckle. After rehearsal, Fellowship Hall buzzed with styrofoam cups of punch. Evelyn chatted with Deacon Price, but her gaze ping-ponged to Harold. When she approached, he braced. "Could you lock up hymnals with me?" she asked, tone brittle. In the choir loft, dust motes pirouetted under stained glass moonlight. She closed the lid on the baby gran, then turned, hands twisting. "Harold, something's changed since the wedding. I feel you slipping. He considered lying again. His shoulders slumped instead. I saw you, Eve. Her face drained. Saw what? In the courtyard. You and Thomas. The words hung like thunderheads. She covered her mouth, eyes welling. Harold, don't, he said, not unkindly. I've watched enough to know it wasn't your first stolen moment. Tears tracked down her cheeks. It was a mistake. A terrible, stupid mistake. What about promises? His voice cracked. We built a life on vows, remember? She reached for him. He stepped back. Piano bench squeaked, echoing the distance. I thought you stopped seeing me, she whispered. Thomas listened. I listened, Harold protested, then deflated. Did I? Betrayal rarely blooms in one storm. Droughts of attention crack the soil first. I'm sorry, she sobbed. I ended it weeks ago. Told him never again. But the wedding? Old habits. Harold swallowed the revelation. Weeks. That lengthened the wound. But before he could respond, the choir loft door swung open. Rose stepped in, clutching a forgotten sheet music binder. She froze at the tableau. Harold, rigid. Evelyn, tear-streaked. Eyes widened. She mouthed, I'm sorry, backing out. Evelyn followed her in panic. Rose! Wait! Harold's heart hammered. Rose's footsteps receded down the nave. Evelyn turned to him. Rose knows? He exhaled. She does now. Outside, cicadas chorused. Rose hurried across the parking lot. Harold caught up. Streetlights slashed gold across her face. Hurt. Embarrassment. Rose, she shook her head. Not here. Voice brittle. You two need healing, not whatever we started. Harold stepped closer. She backed away. Rose, nothing's happened. Her laugh cracked. Nothing? Harold, feelings happen louder than actions. She pressed the binder to her chest like armor. Thomas confessed after your driveway talk. Said you threatened him with footage. She blinked hard. I don't fault you, but I'm drowning in shame none of us deserved. He reached for her hand. She let him, palm trembling. I care about you, he admitted, but I'm married to a vow I don't know how to mend. Rose whispered, then mend it, Harold. Or end it clean. Don't drag me into your half-light. A tear traced her cheek. She turned, slipping into her sedan. Taillights bled red across asphalt as she sped away. Harold stood under the street lamp, grief falling like hot ash. Evelyn approached slowly. For once, no words surfaced, only shared awareness of ruins. At home, they sat opposite each other at the kitchen table, old oak between them like a neutral country. Evelyn whispered first, Do you still love me? Harold stared at their hands, hers folded, his fists loosening. Love is a river, he murmured, recalling his toast. It carves deeper when rocks obstruct. He paused. I'm willing to see if it can carve deeper still. Hope flickered in her gaze, faint but alive. Then a darker thought crossed. And Rose? I need to set her free, he said, voice gravel rough. They agreed on counseling with Reverend King. They prayed, separately, but in the same room. First time in weeks. Outside, Memphis night softened to ebony. Somewhere downriver, barges groaned, hauling secrets toward the Gulf. Late, alone on the porch, Harold phoned Rose. Voicemail answered, He left a message. You were right. I have to mend or end. Thank you for reminding me which path still holds light. He hung up, chest hollow, but lighter. Stay, because rivers rarely choose the easy bend, and some bends still break the banks before finding calm. The third Thursday in September was carved in New Hope's calendar as Harvest Supper, a potluck older than most hymnals. Parishioners arrived in denim jackets and Sunday smiles, balancing casseroles fragrant with paprika and memory. Harold carried Evelyn's cornbread dressing. Its steam fogged his glasses, blurring the fellowship hall into watercolor shapes. What happens when a table built for gratitude becomes the stage for judgment? He and Evelyn had endured 2 counseling sessions, words coaxed like splinters from skin, apologies stitched with cautious thread, yet trust still felt like glass under bare feet. Tonight would test every stitch. Rose had RSVP'd to serve cobbler. Thomas chaired the cleanup committee. Harold pictured 4 tectonic plates set to grind beneath fluorescent lights. Sister Delaney hustled him to the buffet line. Your dressing go at the head, Brother Brown. Folks fight for that crust. Harold forced a chuckle, but his gaze hunted the room. Rose stood at the dessert station ladling peach syrup. Thomas stacked chairs nearby, smile tight as piano wire. Evelyn brushed past them, carrying iced tea. Their shoulders almost touched, then veered like repelled magnets. Marcus and Camille arrived late, cheeks sunburned from honeymoon, laughter still fizzing. Dad, Mom, Marcus waved. They hugged, the young couple's glow briefly bleaching out tension. Camille whispered, We missed you. Harold squeezed her hand, if only warmth could inoculate against revelations. During grace, Reverend King's baritone rumbled thanks for food that feeds bodies and fellowship that feeds wounded hearts. Harold felt the words land like stones dropped into a well. Thomas's amen rang loud, too loud. The potluck tide rolled. Plates clattered, stories traded, choir kids snuck extra brownies. Harold noticed Rose avoiding Thomas's orbit, orbiting instead near Evelyn, polite but clipped. 2 wives circling one wound, neither knowing whether to suture or sever. When Harold fetched coffee, Thomas cornered him by the percolator. Heard you and Eve sittin' with the Reverend, he said, voice low. Air clear yet? Harold met his gaze, steady. Storms don't clear overnight. Thomas chuckled, metal in the sound. Just hope you ain't poisoning the well with tall tales. Truth doesn't need height to drown a man, Harold replied. He carried mugs back to Evelyn, hands so calm they surprised him. The evening's centerpiece was always the slideshow, photos of baptisms, births, memorials, projected on a bedsheet. Harold had volunteered tech years ago, so when Reverend waved the remote aloft, Harold took his post beside the laptop. Rose stood to help dim lights. Thomas resumed chair duty at the back. Evelyn poured punch. Fellowship hushed, ready for nostalgia. First slide, Sister Bernice's tomato garden. Second, youth choir car wash. Smiles bloomed. Harold advanced frames, heartbeat steady, until the image stuttered. Screen flashed black, then a frozen courtyard under string lights. 2 shadowed figures appeared, familiar silhouettes. A collective inhale rippled. Harold's blood iced. The flash drive. Rose gasped near the switch panel. Evelyn's pitcher tilted, ice rattling. On screen, Evelyn's face turned toward Thomas, his hand lifted to her cheek. The kiss bloomed pixel sharp. Silence crashed, deafening. Cups halted midway to mouths. Revelation sometimes roars loudest through 50 stunned heartbeats. Harold's fingers flew to the keyboard. He slammed escape, yanked the drive. Too late. Image seared into memory. Light returned. Conversations erupted like sparrow swarms. Reverend King strode forward. Church, there's been a technical mishap. But eyes tracked Evelyn and Thomas, faces pale under fluorescent mercy. Evelyn set the pitcher down with a porcelain thunk, mouth opening, closing. Thomas's chair stack toppled. Marcus stared at the screen's now blank sheet, disbelief cracking across his features. Camille clutched his arm, eyes wet. Rose stood frozen, one hand on her throat. Someone whispered, "Lord have mercy." A prayer and a verdict. Harold felt heat flood ears. Anger at the public exposure. Terror at collateral damage. He scanned the hall. Who swapped files? Only two possessed the video, himself and Rose. His gaze found her. Tears spilled down her cheeks. She mouthed, "I didn't." He believed her. Shame soured deeper. Then who? Camille. Of course, she alone had extracted the clip. Perhaps she'd saved it to warn but set the wrong folder. Intentions benign. Fallout catastrophic. Marcus turned to Harold, voice breaking. "Dad, what is this?" Harold stepped forward, palms raised. Words stuck like dry bread. Evelyn answered first, voice trembling. "Marcus, I sinned." "Your father just learned," gasps erupted. Thomas blurted, "It ain't how it looks." Rose's laugh cracked, brittle. "Exactly how, Thomas." Reverend King called for calm, but calm had left the building. Some members ushered children out. Others gathered like storm clouds. Thomas strode toward Evelyn, but Harold blocked him. "Stay." One syllable, iron-dipped. Thomas's fists balled. "I won't be vilified alone." Rose stepped between them. "You built this disgrace with your own hands," she snapped, voice ringing like hymn bell. Sometimes the quietest faithful carry thunder for occasions such as this. Thomas's shoulders slumped under decades suddenly visible. "Rose, I made mistakes." "You carved abysses," she retorted. Reverend King redirected the congregation to prayer circles, but whispers skittered. Marcus guided Camille aside, shock shading to shame. He shot Harold a wounded look. "Why did you hide this?" Harold's heart split anew. As voices rose, Harold realized only one salve existed, confession overshadowing spectacle. He climbed the stage steps, lifted the broken remote like a tiny cross. Microphone whined, then steadied. "My brothers, my sisters," he began, voice hoarse. "Tonight, sin found daylight. That sin belongs to my household. And to me, heads whipped." He inhaled. "No, I didn't stray. But I let neglect sow drought. I let silence grow weeds. For that, I repent." Evelyn's sob cracked the hush. Thomas stared at floorboards. Harold continued, "What you saw should not have been broadcast. Mercy demands privacy, but truth refused to stay locked. I ask your prayers for my marriage and for the Fords. We will seek counsel, restitution, forgiveness." He swallowed. "And if my example ever inspired you, remember, even teachers scrape knees." A murmur of amends drifted. A few stony faces remained. He stepped down, shoulders shaking, not in shame now, but release. A wound named aloud begins to clot, but not before the sting spreads. After the hall emptied, supper abandoned, gossip simmering, 6 remained: Harold, Evelyn, Thomas, Rose, Marcus, Camille. Chairs formed a reluctant circle beneath buzzing fluorescence. No mediator, only raw humanity. Marcus broke first, voice splintered. "Mom, why? Dad, how could you hide it?" Evelyn wept. "I was lonely, son. Your father's mind was always grading papers, counseling others. I let temptation in. Harold reached for Marcus's shoulder. His son flinched, then relented. I feared destroying your day, Harold whispered, but secrets rot faster in darkness. Camille squeezed Marcus's hand. Tears streamed. My dad, she began, but words failed. She looked at Thomas, eyes twin daggers of hurt. Thomas rubbed his temples. I won't defend what you saw. I defended the wrong battles at home, too. He glanced at Rose. Too many late-night boardrooms. Not enough late-night talks. Rose's voice softened, but stayed alive with ache. Talk now, Thomas. Begin where the wound started. She turned to Evelyn. You and I? Sisters in pain we never chose. Shall we choose healing together? Evelyn nodded, hope flickering. Harold cleared his throat. We stand on fault lines. We can let the quake swallow us, or build new ground. He looked at Marcus and Camille. Your marriage is young. Learn from our cracks. Tend the soil. Marcus's eyes shone. We will, Dad. He turned to Camille, pressing forehead to hers. The gesture held both mourning and commitment. An hour crawled by. Confessions unfurled. Small betrayals. Forgotten anniversaries. Pride disguised as service. Each admission loosened another knot. When silence finally settled, it felt different. Not the hush before storm, but the hush after heavy rain. They closed in prayer. 6 hands linked. Rose led, voice steady if tremulous. Lord, teach our rivers to meet in mercy, not flood. Outside, midnight's breeze cooled sweat-sticky necks. Thomas and Rose drove away together, conversation already kindled. Marcus and Camille left arm in arm. Harold and Evelyn stood alone under the portico light. Evelyn spoke first. You bared your soul. Thank you. I bared half, he admitted. My heart wandered, even if my body didn't. She touched his cheek. We'll chart every wandering and walk home. They drove home, windows cracked, letting autumn sneak in. On the porch, Harold paused at the threshold. One last thing, he said. He retrieved the flash drive from his coat, walked to the trash barrel, and struck a match. Plastic curled, metal hissed, truth releasing its final hold. Flames flickered against Evelyn's face. She nodded approval. Cold rain pattered against the Browns' porch roof the next dawn, as if the sky itself sifted sorrow into something gentler. Harold rose before the alarm, wrapped in his father's old cardigan, and brewed chicory coffee strong enough to steady a carpenter's hand. The house smelled of cinnamon from a forgotten candle, but also of charred plastic, the ghost of last night's flash drive burning. Can a marriage reclaimed from smoke ever smell the same? Evelyn padded in wearing Harold's college sweatshirt, sleeves swallowed to her knuckles. She looked different this morning, softer around the eyes, but taller in her own courage. They stood in kitchen hush, steam curling between them. Neither spoke aloud the ache in their chests, but something else hovered, an almost daring spark of hope. They carried mugs to the sunroom, where rain-washed magnolia leaves glossy. Evelyn traced a fingertip over the condensation on glass. It's funny, she whispered, how water can polish everything it touches, except the heart. Harold considered that. Maybe it does, he said. Just takes longer. He set his cup down and reached for her hand, tentative, like touching new piano keys after decades of familiar hymns. She let him. Skin met skin. Silence steadied. Counseling continued twice a week. Reverend King assigned homework, writing unfiltered letters to each other. No filters, no edits. Some pages wept ink. Others shook with anger. They read aloud by candlelight, then burned each letter in the grill behind the garage, ashes littering autumn grass like miniature comets. One morning, Harold attended his first marriage support group, 6 couples in folding chairs. He listened to stories of infidelity, numbness, renewal, and felt less alone. Afterward, he lingered with an older deacon who had forgiven his wife's decades-old affair. "Cheating isn't the fire," the deacon said. "It's the oxygenless room. Open windows." Brother Harold drove home with windows cracked wide, rain needling his cheek. Evelyn reopened her pottery wheel in the basement, abandoned since Marcus left for college. Clay spun, gray as river mud, reshaping under her palms. One evening, she called Harold down to watch. As she coaxed a wobbling vase toward balance, she murmured, "This part, where it collapses a little, if you steady the base, it can still rise." He knew she wasn't talking about Clay. Mid-November, Harold invited Marcus and Camille for Sunday supper. He slow-cooked ribs. Evelyn baked sweet potato pie. At the table, conversation tiptoed, but never tripped. Marcus finally cleared his throat. "Mom, Dad, we've seen storms at sea, but last month you showed us how to steer." Camille squeezed his knee. Tears blurred Evelyn's eyes. Harold felt relief seep deeper than marrow. Sometimes children become the lighthouse. Other times, they reflect the beam right back. Thanksgiving approached. New Hope's choir rehearsed the cantata, "Love is the River." Harold's baritone found richer timbre, shaped by ache and grit. Evelyn still directed, but now she paused to let Harold coach the basses, shared leadership blooming like crocuses after frost. Parish whispers grew kinder. Gossip fatigues quicker than grace. One Saturday, Harold drove to the river bluff alone, casserole dish strapped in the trunk, this time filled with cornbread scented with honey. He texted Rose, "Mind a visitor?" She replied, "Front porch." Noon. Her house smelled of cedar and fresh paint. Thomas had fixed the porch rail he'd ignored for years. Rose welcomed Harold with a smile, worn thin but honest. They sat in wicker chairs, rocking to creak and sigh rhythms older than Beale Street. Clouds raced overhead. Wind shook burnt orange leaves loose. "I came to thank you," Harold began. Rose lifted a brow. "For the hardest mirror anyone's ever held up for me." He inhaled. "And to say I closed the door we'd cracked open." She exhaled, nodding. "Thomas and we're trying. Counseling, small steps." Her fingers toyed with her wedding band, now sized tighter. "Some days feel like walking on eggshells over a crevasse, but we walk." Harold passed her the cornbread. "Marcus insists you keep this dish." Tears glinted. She accepted. "Tell him we'll return the favor at Christmas." They spoke of church projects, Camille's graduate program, Thomas's newfound humility volunteering at the soup kitchen. Unsaid, possibility, tension, undercurrents, acknowledged by absence rather than presence. As Harold rose to leave, Rose touched his sleeve. "Tell Evelyn. The vase she gifted our wedding is still whole." He smiled soft. "Ours, too, in a way." He walked to the car lighter. Back home, Harold found Evelyn kneeling in the garden, planting bulbs. Rain-soft soil gloved her hands, and earth smudged her cheek. He knelt next to her. "Hyacinths? Early spring color," she said. "We'll need it." He recounted the porch visit, honest, every word. Evelyn listened, breathing slow, then kissed his muddied knuckles. "Thank you for the truth at first telling," she said. She pressed a bulb into ground. Buried things can bloom, if tended. Bulbs look like graves in November, miracles in March. Christmas Eve candlelight service arrived with crisp air smelling of pine and possibility. Choir robes rustled. Children's bell chorus chimed timid glorias. Candles passed flame to flame, each small light baptizing the sanctuary in trembling gold. Harold stood at Evelyn's side on the rostrum, hands brushing. Rose and Thomas slid into the third pew, fingers intertwined. Marcus and Camille swayed in the balcony, Marcus's hand resting on Camille's swelling belly. News shared a week earlier over cocoa. The congregation didn't know yet. Hush of anticipation glowed brighter than tinseled tree. Reverend King preached on second chances. The manger makes room for flaws. Straw never judges footprints. Harold felt those words settle like warm shawls. When the choir rose, Evelyn lifted her baton, then paused. She turned to Harold, silent question. He nodded. She stepped back. Harold stepped forward to direct the final hymn, an old spiritual arranged for men's voices and strings. He'd never conducted before, but his hands found rhythm, guiding crescendos that threaded every broken story into harmony. Lyrics spoke of rivers meeting the sea, of burdens passing under the bridge named Mercy. Harold's voice joined, steady as sunrise. Thomas's tenor answered. Rose's alto braided beneath. Evelyn sang descant, pure, unwavering. Congregation's voices rose unstoppable. Tears glazed Harold's eyes, but he kept tempo. Candle flames whipped in gentle drafts like souls dancing. Sometimes redemption isn't fireworks. It's a choir note, held a breath longer than fear. After the benediction, Marcus and Camille announced the baby, holding up a tiny knitted booty. Cheers erupted. Even pew-stiff deacons wiped eyes. Harold hugged his son, whispering blessings over 3 generations. Outside, snowflakes, rare gift in Memphis, twirled under streetlights. The air smelled of cedar, wax, and hot chocolate served by youth volunteers. Harold and Evelyn strolled the sidewalk arm in arm. Snow melted on their cheeks like anointing water. Evelyn stopped under the magnolia tree by the parsonage gate. Its branches, bare but sturdy, framed moonlight. "Do you think it will bloom come spring?" she asked. "Rivers keep flowing," Harold answered. He brushed snow from her curls. "Trees will answer in time." She smiled, eyes bright. "Then let's be patient gardeners." He drew her close. They kissed. Soft, seasoned, no fireworks, just ember-warm steadiness. Around them, family laughed, bells chimed, and magnolia limbs creaked, a language promising blossoms after frost. Farther south, the Mississippi rolled on, carrying secrets, yes, but also carrying silt that would one day nourish new banks. In its current, shattered vows and mended promises drifted side by side, indistinguishable under moonlit snow. Harold and Evelyn stepped through their front door, leaving snowprints that would melt by morning. On the hall table lay 2 letters, one from Thomas, and Rose inviting them to a New Year's potluck of renewal, one from the counseling center confirming their graduation to peer mentors. Harold held Evelyn's coat while she hung it. In the quiet foyer, he whispered, "Love's river carved deeper still." She squeezed his hand. Somewhere outside, a lone caroler's voice lifted, echoing against brick, carrying winter hope into every listening heart.